In the waning years of the 1980s, Japan stood as a paradox, a nation basking in the glow of its economic miracle, yet haunted by shadows that crept silently through its gleaming cities. Tokyo, a metropolis of neon and steel, pulsed with the relentless rhythm of progress. Bullet trains sliced through the countryside, carrying millions toward futures that seemed both limitless and suffocating. The world envied Japan's prosperity, but few understood the silent burdens that pressed down on its people. Beneath the surface, the cost of this prosperity was measured not only in yen, but in the erosion of something less tangible. The traditional pillars, family, ritual, community, were cracking under the weight of modernity. The old ways, once a compass for generations, were fading into memory. In their place, a new order had risen, one of corporate loyalty, social conformity, and unspoken expectations. The pressure to succeed was omnipresent, a silent current that shaped every gesture and decision. For many, the city's bright lights cast long, inescapable shadows. Alienation became a quiet epidemic. In crowded trains, office towers, and tiny apartments, millions moved in perfect synchrony, yet felt profoundly alone. The rituals of daily life, bowing, exchanging business cards, the quiet etiquette of public spaces, offered structure but little solace. The heart of the nation beat with discipline, but also with a growing sense of emptiness. The search for meaning, for something to fill the void left by tradition's retreat, became urgent and desperate. It was in this climate of spiritual hunger that new religious movements flourished. The 1980s saw a proliferation of sects and gurus, each promising answers to questions that modern life could not resolve. Some offered healing through ancient practices, others transcendence through meditation or esoteric knowledge. In rented halls and makeshift temples, seekers gathered, salarymen exhausted by the grind, students disillusioned by the future, housewives yearning for connection. They came looking for hope, for community, for a sense of purpose that the world outside seemed unable to provide. Yet, among these countless groups, one would soon distinguish itself, not by the solace it offered, but by the darkness it would unleash. In the labyrinthine backstreets of Tokyo, a man named Chizo Matsumoto was quietly assembling a following. To his disciples, he was Shoko Asahara, a guru with a vision that transcended the boundaries of life and death. His teachings were an alchemical blend of Buddhism, Hindu yoga, apocalyptic prophecy, and science fiction. He spoke of enlightenment, but also of impending doom. He promised salvation, but only for those willing to surrender everything. AUM SHINRIKYO began as a whisper, a rumor of miracles, a promise of spiritual awakening. Its early members were drawn by the prospect of transformation, both personal and cosmic. They meditated, chanted, and submitted to Asahara's rigorous disciplines, believing they were preparing for a higher existence. Outsiders saw only a harmless yoga group, one among many in a city teeming with spiritual experimentation. But beneath the tranquil surface, something far more sinister was taking shape. Asahara's charisma masked the growing paranoia, a conviction that the world was on the brink of catastrophe and that only his chosen could survive. The group's practices grew more secretive, its teachings more extreme. Laboratories were established, weapons researched, and loyalty demanded at any cost. The seeds of destruction were being sown in silence, watered by the fears and hopes of those who followed. This is where the true story of AUM SHINRIKYO begins. Not with violence, but with longing, with a society searching for meaning and a leader who promised to deliver it, whatever the price. But what transformed this quest for enlightenment into a machinery of terror? The answer lies in the origins of AUM SHINRIKYO and in the mind of the man who would soon see himself not just as a teacher, but as a messiah. But this is only the beginning. The next chapter reveals how a single vision, twisted by ambition and fear, would spiral into one of the darkest episodes in modern history. The origin of AUM SHINRIKYO is rooted in contradiction, a collision between the humble and the megalomaniac, the spiritual and the apocalyptic. Chizuo Matsumoto, Born in 1955 to a poor family in Kumamoto Prefecture, arrived in the world half-blind, his vision clouded by congenital glaucoma. Within the walls of a small tatami-floored home, poverty etched itself into his bones. Marginality became his first companion, and the yearning for significance soon grew into a hunger no daily ritual could satisfy. As a boy, he was both an outcast and a dreamer, drifting between the edges of society and the fantasies that would one day consume him. He discovered religion as a lifeline, first the strict order of traditional Buddhism, then the mysticism of occultism and yoga. The lines between faith and ambition blurred. In his 20s, Matsumoto experimented with herbal medicine and opened a small acupuncture shop, presenting himself as a healer in a city that barely noticed him. But obscurity could not contain his longing. He sought more than survival. He craved reverence, a place in the world's memory. In 1984, Matsumoto founded a yoga school in Tokyo. What began as a modest studio offering breathing exercises and meditation soon became something else entirely. Under the name Shoko Asahara, he cultivated an aura of spiritual mastery. He claimed to possess psychic powers, to read minds, to levitate, to transmit cosmic energy. The more fantastic his claims, the more followers arrived, drawn by a leader who seemed to embody the impossible. For those who felt invisible in the machinery of society, Asahara's gaze offered recognition, his teachings a map to transcendence. AUM SHINRIKYO, AUM, the supreme truth, took shape as a doctrine stitched together from the fragments of Eastern philosophy, Western esotericism, and Asahara's own apocalyptic visions. He prophesied a coming Armageddon, a world purified by suffering. His followers, mostly young and highly educated, surrendered their lives and savings, believing they were chosen for survival when the end came. They let go of families, careers, and names, exchanging them for white robes and the promise of salvation. Asahara's methods grew more controlling. Initiates endured sleep deprivation, hours of meditation, loyalty tests, and the ritual drinking of his bathwater, an act meant to absorb his alleged spiritual energy. Dissent was silenced through fear and psychological manipulation. The line between devotion and obedience vanished, and a culture of absolute submission flourished. The guru's word was law, his vision reality. In the shadowed meditation halls, doubt was a heresy, punishable by exile, or worse. But the outside world remained blind to the transformation underway. Authorities saw only an eccentric yoga group, and the media, momentarily intrigued, turned its gaze elsewhere. Behind closed doors, however, Asahara's paranoia deepened. He spoke of enemies everywhere, governments, scientists, rival sects, who sought to destroy his mission. Every setback, every criticism became a sign of cosmic war. The boundaries between prophecy and persecution dissolved, driving the group further inward and downward. Authorities saw only an eccentric yoga group, and the media, momentarily intrigued, turned its gaze elsewhere. Here, in the crucible of isolation and fear, the next stage of AUM Shinrikyo was forged. The seeds of devotion had taken root, but they would soon bear fruit of a very different kind. A harvest not of enlightenment, but of fanaticism and dread. The group's transformation was nearly complete, its identity now inseparable from the will of its leader. But what emerged from these origins was not merely a sect. It was an organism, evolving, mutating, hungering for power. The outside world would soon be forced to reckon with the consequences. The slow drift into darkness was not marked by a single act, but by a series of choices, each more audacious, each more irreversible. By the late 1980s, AUM Shinrikyo's inner circle had become a crucible of ambition and fear, where loyalty was measured not only in belief, but in sacrifice. Asahara's sermons sharpened, bristling with prophecies of annihilation. He no longer courted the mainstream. He warned of a coming cataclysm, a war in which only his followers would find salvation. For the faithful, these words became a clarion call. For the world beyond, the threat remained invisible, yet the machinery of destruction was already in motion. Inside the group's compounds, the air thickened with secrecy and dread. Laboratories sprouted behind locked doors, staffed by disciples trained in chemistry, biology, and engineering. Recruitment shifted focus. AUM now pursued the best minds from Japan's top universities, luring scientists with promises of spiritual advancement and purpose. The cult amassed wealth and resources, channeled into experiments that blurred the line between devotion and weaponization. The doctrine of spiritual purity now justified the pursuit of scientific terror. It was here that the first fractures appeared. Dissenters, those who hesitated, who questioned, who wished to leave, became enemies of the cause. They vanished without a trace, their silence a chilling reminder to those who remained. Surveillance intensified. Paranoia spread through the ranks like a contagion, and the once unifying rituals curdled into instruments of control. The boundaries of morality, once clear and sacred, began to dissolve. The group's sense of persecution grew, fueled by Asahara's warnings of external enemies and imminent disaster. But the world outside could not ignore AUM forever. By 1989, rumors of abuse, disappearances, and coercion began to surface. Journalists poked at the edges of the cult's secrecy, and families of missing members pleaded for answers. The police, slow to act, underestimated the depths of fanaticism at play. One by one, the warnings were dismissed. Inside AUM, this scrutiny was twisted into proof of persecution, a sign that the prophesied apocalypse was drawing nearer. The group's isolation deepened, and the echo chamber of fear and devotion grew more intense. The breaking point arrived with a single, irrevocable act. In November 1989, Tsutsumi Sakamoto, a lawyer investigating AUM on behalf of concerned families, vanished along with his wife and infant son. The disappearance sent ripples of fear through the community, but the truth remained buried for years. Sakamoto and his family had been murdered by AUM members, their bodies hidden in remote countryside. This was the moment when the cult crossed an invisible threshold. The doctrine of spiritual war had become a license for murder. The disciples, bound by loyalty and terror, obeyed without question. The break with reality was complete. The descent was irreversible. But the spiral into violence was only beginning. The next phase would see the cult cross a threshold from secret ambitions to public horror, a transformation that would forever scar a nation's memory. The threshold had been crossed, and the darkness began to spiral outward. The murder of those who threatened the cult's secrecy had set a precedent. Now, nothing was forbidden. In the early 1990s, AUM SHINRIKYO transformed itself from a reclusive sect into a clandestine empire of fear and experimentation. Secrecy thickened around their compounds, where steel gates and high walls shielded hidden laboratories from the world outside. The air inside was charged with the hum of machines, the clatter of glassware, and the murmurs of unwavering faith. AUM's ambitions swelled far beyond spiritual salvation. The group invested millions into scientific research, building facilities that rivaled those of universities and state institutions. Their laboratories became crucibles for forbidden knowledge, where disciples in white coats worked day and night, driven by the conviction that they were chosen to reshape the world. Here, chemistry and paranoia converged. The cult scientists perfected toxins, VX, sarin, phosgene, and hoarded biological agents, experimenting with weaponized anthrax and botulinum. The line between science and sacrilege had vanished, replaced by a feverish pursuit of power at any cost. The scale of AUM's preparations was staggering. The group amassed stockpiles of chemicals, purchased helicopters and military equipment, and even attempted to acquire Russian military hardware through shadowy intermediaries. Asahara's vision expanded. If society would not accept his truth, then society must be forced to witness it. Plans were drawn for mass poisonings, assassinations, and attacks on public infrastructure. Disciples rehearsed drills in secrecy, their faces hidden behind masks, their loyalty tested by acts of cruelty and silence. Any trace of doubt was eradicated in an atmosphere thick with surveillance and suspicion. The cult's reach extended into politics and business. AUM established front companies, infiltrated universities, and courted officials with bribes and influence. They manipulated the stock market and laundered money through shell organizations, creating a financial web as intricate as any criminal syndicate. Power was no longer a distant dream. It was becoming reality, woven into the machinery of the state itself. The cult's tentacles reached into the heart of Japanese society, blurring the line between the legitimate and the illicit. But inside the cult, the climate grew ever more oppressive. Members lived under the constant threat of punishment, subjected to torturous initiations and relentless indoctrination. Families were torn apart, children separated from parents and raised as instruments of the group's future. Some, driven to the edge by fear and exhaustion, tried to escape. Few succeeded. The outside world, meanwhile, remained largely unaware of the true scale of AUM's operations. Occasional media reports hinted at danger, but the depths of the cult's depravity remained hidden in shadow. Here begins the part most shrouded in dread. The moment when AUM Shinrikyo, now fully transformed into an engine of terror, prepared to unleash its apocalyptic vision on an unsuspecting nation. The air itself would become a weapon, the city a theater for horror. Even as the cult's ambitions grew monstrous, the authorities hesitated, unable to fathom the magnitude of what was coming. But what happened next would forever redefine the boundaries of terror in modern Japan, and leave scars no passage of time could erase. It began in the early dawn of March 20th, 1995. Tokyo stirred as it always did. Millions pressed into trains. The city pulsed with a mechanical certainty of routine. Yet, within this choreography of daily life, 5 men boarded different subway lines, each carrying a plastic bag and a sharpened umbrella. Their faces betrayed no emotion. They were loyal to a vision that demanded blood. As the trains rumbled through the tunnels, these men laid the bags on the floors, punctured them, and slipped away into the anonymous tide. In minutes, invisible tendrils of sarin gas curled through the carriages. Confusion gave way to panic as commuters gasped for air, eyes burning, bodies collapsing. Station by station, the poison spread its silent horror. Station masters and bystanders rushed to help, unaware of the danger, becoming victims themselves. The city's arteries clogged with ambulances, sirens echoing against steel and concrete. The scale of the attack was unprecedented. 13 dead, over 1,000 injured, countless lives forever altered in an instant. The city, paralyzed by fear, became a tableau of chaos and disbelief. Tokyo's order had shattered, replaced by the terror of the unseen and the arbitrary. But this was only the most visible of AUM's atrocities. In the preceding months and years, the cult had carried out lesser-known attacks. Failed sarin releases in Matsumoto, attempted assassinations, bizarre experiments on dissidents and enemies, and systematic torture within their own ranks. These incidents, once dismissed as anomalies, now revealed a pattern. AUM was a machine of destruction, its gears lubricated by fanaticism and paranoia. The authorities, finally awakened to the horror, launched a massive crackdown. Police stormed AUM compounds, uncovering an arsenal of chemical agents, weapon stockpiles, and torture chambers. The cult's leadership, including Asafara himself, was arrested in a series of dramatic raids. The extent of the group's ambitions staggered investigators. Evidence pointed to plans for even greater attacks, including biological warfare and targeted assassinations of public figures. In courtroom after courtroom, survivors testified to the indoctrination, the violence, the psychological grip that AUM had held on its followers. The nation watched, horrified, as the details spilled into public view. Yet the damage could not be undone. The survivors, forever marked by trauma, struggled to rebuild shattered lives. Families mourned the lost, while the city itself seemed altered. A sense of innocence, of trust in the fabric of society had been irreparably torn. For years, the scars lingered in the collective mind. The fear of crowded trains, the suspicion of strangers, the haunting knowledge that even in the heart of order, chaos could erupt without warning. But the consequences did not end with the arrests. The revelation of AUM's reach into business, government, and academia sparked a reckoning across Japan. Laws were rewritten, security tightened, yet the questions remained. How could such darkness have grown unchecked? What had blinded so many to the warning signs? The answers would prove elusive, as the nation struggled to come to terms with the reality that the terror had not come from outside, but from within the very structures meant to ensure safety and peace. And in this aftermath, the world saw a new face of modern terror. The attack on Tokyo's subway was not just a crime, it was a rupture in the sense of what was possible. A warning that the machinery of modern life could be hijacked by the machinery of fanaticism. The memory of the victims, the courage of the survivors, and the lessons left behind would haunt the city for generations to come. Decades have passed since the morning when sarin gas drifted through the veins of Tokyo's subway, but the aftermath of AUM SHINRIKYO's terror still reverberates in the subconscious of Japan and the world. The physical scars on the survivors have faded, yet the psychological wounds remain raw, festering in memories and nightmares. In public spaces, vigilance became a new custom. Security cameras multiplied in stations and public buildings, and the gentle anonymity of daily life was replaced by a subtle, ever-present suspicion. The once unshakable trust in the order of society has been fundamentally altered, as if the attack had permanently shifted the axis of what it means to be safe. The legal and political landscape did not emerge unchanged. Japan, a nation long proud of its low crime rate and social cohesion, was forced to confront the uncomfortable reality of homegrown extremism. Laws governing religious organizations were rewritten, surveillance powers expanded, and background checks for sensitive positions became routine. AUM's remaining assets were seized, its leadership prosecuted, and its followers scattered or placed under watch. Yet even as the name AUM SHINRIKYO was erased from official records, its legacy proved more difficult to expunge. Fragments of the cult survived, splintering into offshoots that rebranded under new banners. Aleph, Hikari no Wa, shedding the most overt signs of fanaticism but never fully renouncing the doctrine of their founder. The specter of recidivism haunted authorities as reports of covert gatherings and attempts at recruitment surfaced intermittently. For many Japanese, the idea that such a movement could re-emerge is not a distant fear, but an ongoing anxiety. The trauma of 1995 lingers as a cautionary tale, a reminder that vigilance must never lapse, that the roots of radicalization can twist their way through even the most ordered societies. But perhaps the most profound consequence is the shift in collective consciousness, an awareness that the machinery of progress, so trusted and admired, is not immune to sabotage from within. The Tokyo subway attack became a reference point for governments and intelligence agencies worldwide, influencing counterterrorism strategies and the monitoring of cults and extremist groups. AUM's story is now studied not only as a singular tragedy, but as a warning. The potential for darkness lies dormant in the cracks of every civilization, waiting for the right conditions to awaken. The survivors, meanwhile, live with the echo of that day in every crowded train or sudden alarm. Some have found the strength to speak publicly, campaigning for victim support and reforms to prevent future atrocities. Others keep their stories locked away, unable to revisit the trauma. And among the families who lost loved ones, grief has become a private ritual, woven into the quiet moments of remembrance that mark each passing year. Yet, in the spaces where pain lingers, so too does resilience. The city rebuilt, the trains run, and life continues. But beneath the rhythm of daily existence, the lesson endures, that safety is never absolute, and that the greatest threats may rise not from foreign enemies, but from the shadows cast by our own fears and longing for meaning. In Japan's collective memory, The specter of AUM SHINRIKYO is a scar, one that aches in silence, reminding a nation that vigilance and empathy are the only true antidotes to the poison of fanaticism. In the web of statistics and headlines, it is easy to lose sight of the quiet, enduring pain that lingers behind each number. For every survivor, the attack was not just a moment in history, but a fracture that split the timeline of their lives into before and after. Among them is Kiko, a name changed to protect her privacy, who entered the Tokyo subway that morning a young nurse, her mind occupied by the ordinary burdens of a new shift and a distant promise of spring. She boarded the Chiyoda line, pressed between silent strangers, unaware that the act of stepping onto that train would mark her forever. When the gas seeped into the carriage, Keiko felt a sudden sting in her eyes, a sensation so out of place it seemed at first like a trick of exhaustion. Then chaos erupted. Screams fractured the silence, bodies crumpled, and the world shrank to a fog of burning lungs and blurred vision. She remembers the metallic taste of panic, the desperate press of hands searching for help, the sound of her own breathing growing ragged. In those minutes, the city's order was replaced by primal fear. The memory of strangers collapsing at her feet, the acrid smell of chemicals, the confusion and terror, these became etched into her mind, replaying in dreams and in the quiet moments between waking and sleep. Keiko survived, but the passage through that morning left her changed in ways invisible to most. Her recovery was slow and incomplete. The physical injuries healed long before her mind found any semblance of peace. Crowded spaces triggered memories that returned with a violence as sharp as the gas itself. She left her job, unable to face the morning trains, and withdrew from friends who could not understand the weight she carried. Even in moments of calm, the world felt forever altered, fragile, uncertain, haunted by what could happen at any moment. The simple act of entering a subway station became a trial of will, each step a confrontation with the past. Yet, Kiko's story is not only one of loss. Over time, she found new rituals of resilience, walking in quiet parks at dawn, volunteering at support groups for trauma survivors, sharing her testimony in carefully chosen words. In these spaces, she encountered others who bore scars like hers, strangers bound by a silent understanding. Together, they wove a new fabric of community, one stitched by empathy and the shared determination to reclaim a sense of safety, however imperfect. The support groups became a sanctuary, a place where the language of trauma was understood without explanation, and where hope could be rebuilt thread by fragile thread. Her voice, once tentative, became a thread in the larger tapestry of remembrance and warning. For Kiko, healing did not mean forgetting. It meant bearing witness so that the past would not be erased and that the dead would not be lost to silence. In her story, the true cost of fanaticism is made achingly clear. It is measured not only in the dead, but in the living who must learn to move through a world forever changed. Her journey is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and a reminder that even in the aftermath of horror, the act of remembering is itself an act of courage. History is not a distant landscape, but a mirror, its shadows flickering in every society that dares to look too quickly away. The story of AUM SHINRIKYO is not only about a cult, or its leader, or even the day when poison laced the air beneath Tokyo. It is a warning written in invisible ink across the boundaries of faith, science, and longing. It exposes the abyss that can open when certainty hardens into dogma, and when the yearning for meaning is twisted into the machinery of violence. Beneath the spectacle of terror, the roots are always ordinary: loneliness, alienation, the desire to belong. In a world that prizes order and progress, the cracks are easy to ignore until something monstrous grows in the silence. AUM SHINRIKYO's rise was not inevitable, but it was made possible by the fractures in a society that celebrated success but left many adrift. When the promise of transcendence is wielded as a weapon, the sacred becomes profane, and the search for illumination becomes a descent into darkness. The legacy of AUM is not only measured in the lives it destroyed, but in the questions it leaves behind. How do we safeguard against the seduction of certainty? How do we create communities resilient enough to resist the lure of fanaticism? In an age where new ideologies can spread at the speed of light, the lesson is urgent. Vigilance must be paired with empathy, and memory with action. The machinery of terror is built not only by those who lead, but by those who turn away, who silence doubt, who place comfort above conscience. Yet there is a deeper reckoning that lingers beneath the surface, a reckoning with our own capacity for blindness. The story of AUM Shinrikyo is a reminder that evil rarely arrives in monstrous form. It comes disguised as hope, as belonging, as the promise of a better world. It preys on the isolated, the lost, and the idealistic. It grows in the spaces where questions are silenced and where authority is never challenged. The cult's tragedy is not only in its violence, but in the silence that allowed it to flourish for so long. For every Keiko, for every survivor, and every family left behind, the scars are not just personal, they are communal. The pain radiates outward, shaping laws, rituals, and the very rhythm of daily life. In the aftermath, Japan was forced to confront not only the horror of the attack, but the uncomfortable truth that the seeds of fanaticism can take root anywhere. The challenge is not just to remember, but to act. To build societies where doubt is not punished, where compassion is not weakness, and where the search for meaning is met with understanding, not exploitation. There is no final reassurance, no promise that such darkness will not return. But there is a choice, renewed each day, to face the abyss with open eyes and with compassion. To remember that the price of forgetting is always too high. Only by holding space for those who bear the scars of fanaticism and by refusing to look away from the shadows in our midst can a society hope to remain whole. If this story moved you, subscribe for more journeys into the shadows of history. And remember, the past is not behind us. It is in the choices we make and the courage we find every day.